Good day, everyone. We are the Group 3, and I am Valerie Ansariano, together with Maria Paula Morok, Diana Rose Aronan, Crisel Joyce Agorino, Hani Leona, Ruby Martamayo, and Erica May Divino. We're going to discuss the topic, which is about the memo. Next slide, please. A memo, also known as a memorandum, is a written document used to communicate an announcement or notification. Memos were originally the predominant method of written internal communication, but they are now widely delivered by email. It is frequently written from a one-to-all perspective, similar to mass communication, broadcasting a message to a large audience rather than one-on-one interpersonal contact. It can also be used to keep a team up to date on a project activity or to notify a specific group within an organization of an event, action, or observation. So there are many different forms of memos, but they often provide a progress report, ask someone or a team for something, confirm an agreement between parties, or solicit feedback on how to solve an issue. Next slide, please. So the majority of the time, the objective of creating a memorandum is to inform. Memos, on the other hand, can occasionally incorporate a call to action or a persuasive aspect. So when you should write a memo. So here are a few examples of when a memo could be useful. So first, um, informing the staff or the student of changes in school policy or processes. Second, giving an update on major projects or aims. Third one is making a school announcement. Next slide, please. The fourth one is giving reminders of a task that must be accomplished. The fifth one is making a request on behalf of all students. And lastly is communication of message that will refer to multiple times, such as detailed proposal or recommendation. Overall, memos are an effective method of communicating concise but critical messages to a large audience. This may contain schedules, procedure modifications, policy amendments, agreement summaries, and reminders. Additionally, you can send a memo if you wish your audience to print or save the message's contents for future references. Next slide, please. So let us now move with the tone. Tone in writing, tone relates to the writer's attitude towards the reader and the message's subject. The overall tone of a written communication has the same effect on the reader that one's tone of voice does in ordinary conversations. So usually when we write a memo, that the often tone we use is formal. So next slide, please. So how can you ensure that the tone of your memo is appropriate? So here are some tips. So first, rather than employing contractions, use the longer form. Second, instead of using phrasal verbs, use the substitute non-phrasal verbs with the same meaning. Third one is always use proper grammar, punctuations, and capitalizations. Next slide, please. The first one is cite any cited information using the referencing style specified by your professor and include a reference list as an attachment. And the next one is use the active voice rather than the passive voice when expressing responsibility for certain activities. And lastly, you must speak in a professional and courteous tone to your intended audiences.
Good day, everyone. My name is Erica Mitibino, together with Diana Rose Oronan, and we will going to discuss the parts of a memo. Let's proceed. So, and this one is the heading. So, the heading of memorandums is designed to allow a reader to understand what he or she is looking at and decide quickly whether he or she should read it. The heading has 4 or 5 parts appearing in this order. The subject line should be brief but clear. So as we can see, we have here the to, from, date, and RE. So date is the date on which the memo is distributed. And to is for the list names of the recipients of the memo. If there are several recipients, it's acceptable to use a group name, such as all employee or personal committee members or all faculty members or for students. And also from is the name or the job title of the writers, and also the subject. So the subject line, it is the title for the memo. So make it specific so that readers can immediately identify the topic. Many organizations have their own styles, preference on these issues. If not, the order listed above, double spaces is the common format for the heading. So let's proceed to the opening. So opening is the purpose of a memo, is usually found in the opening paragraph and includes the purpose of the memo, the context, and the problem and the specific assigned or task. So before indulging the readers with details and the context, give the readers a brief overview of what the memo will be discussed or about. So we have here the context. The context is the event, circumstances, or backgrounds of the problem you are solving. You may use a paragraph or a few sentences to establish the background and the state the problem. So task segment is one essential portions of a memo is the task statement where should describe what you are doing to help solve the problem if the action was requested. So in this case, in this case, the opening has the purpose of the memo. Okay. So next one is the summary. So summary, if your memo is longer than a page, you may want to include a separate summary segment. However, this section is not necessary for short memos and should not take up a significant amount of space. This segment provides a brief statement of the key recommendations so you have reached. This will help your reader understand the key points of the memo immediately. So remember though that this is a summarization. Keep it brief and um, don't be so longer and needlessly repeat detailed information. Okay, so next one is discussion paragraph.
Okay, let's move on to the other parts of a memo. Discussion paragraph or paragraphs. After you've adequately covered the basic presentation of your topic, uh, in here, here is where you lay out all the details, facts, statistic, hypotheses that support the ideas you've discussed. So in this section, you will be demonstrating your ability to think creatively and critically by presenting your ideas. So we have to begin with the most important or most telling information, proceeding from the strongest fact to the weakest. Or if you are providing historical background, it's from oldest to newest information. So these paragraphs are also the place where you make your recommendations, acknowledge others' recommendations, and describe future problems that might occur and how your suggestions will ensure that such problems simply don't happen. So in also it often helps to put important facts or details into number or bulleted list. Again, discussion paragraph must be from strongest point to weakest. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next part, closing, your closing. So in here, once you've given your readers all the information relevant to the subject of the memo, we have to use a courteous closing that describe the actions you want them to take and point out how those actions will benefit everyone. This paragraph closing might begin with, "We can discuss my recommendations in greater detail at our next meeting," or should you should you need more information, I'd be glad to check. Then we have to make sure in the closing that we have to consider how the reader will benefit from the desired actions, and how you can make those actions easier. Next slide, please. The last part, key attachments. So in here, we have to provide whatever documentation or additional information your readers will need to come to their own understanding of the event, issue, or problem you've described, and list such attachment at the end of the memo. So for example, if there has been an exchange of letters regarding the subject, you have to include the copies of them. If doing so will not breach confidentiality or if they contain information that your readers need to know. If you've created graphs or facts or statistics or diagram that illustrate physical relationship, we can attach those. So you can also refer to such graph, diagrams, or illustration at appropriate points in the memo. But remember, do not attach materials that do not bear directly on the subject of the memo. Next slide, please. So in here, we have an example. The attached photo shows the various parts of a memo from the headings to attachment parts.
Okay, so as we can see, there is a heading and there is a body. So the body conclude the purpose of the memo. So let's proceed. So this is one of the examples of the memo from the Rizal Technological University. Okay, so that's all. Thank you for today.
Format and tips for writing a memo. So here is a sample heading of a memo. The audience for a memo. It is usually to begin by considering that a memo is essentially a one-on-one communication between writer and reader. Although a memo may be written to a group of people or with various audiences in mind, usually it is a highly goal-oriented communication between people who need to share information. Also, if you are asked to write a memo to a professor in the classroom setting, you are much like the employee who has been assigned to investigate a problem and report back to a supervisor. Therefore, you are expected to provide concrete information, even information that the supervisor might already know, in a form that clarifies ideas and puts them into context. So here is the typical memo format. Number one is the heading, number two is the body, and last is the closing notations. The heading. The heading has two parts. Part 1 includes two centered lines at the top of page 1, identifying the name of the company or institution on the first line, with the word memorandum on the second line. And the part 2 includes the date, to, from, and subject lines at the left margin filled in appropriately. So here is the sample memorandum. Based on the definition, you can also put the name of the company above the word memorandum. Next is the body. The body of the memo follows the introduction, and it is usually presented in a single-space paragraph with a line skipped between each paragraph. The first lines of new paragraphs can appear at the left margin or they can be indented 5 spaces. So here is the sample body of the memo. On the first part, direct and concise opening states the purpose of the memo. And the body provides criteria that will enable the department managers to follow through on the request. Last is the closing notations. The closing notations used to identify such things as attachment appear at the left margin, 2 lines below the text of the final paragraph. By simply typing the word attachment as a closing notation, you automatically refer the reader to any attachment, such as a map, a set of calculations, spreadsheets, or a reference page. And here is an example of closing notation. It provides, conclusion provides action, information, deadline, and purchase close.
So how are memos organized? The general organization of a memo mirrors that of an essay, an introduction followed by body paragraphs followed by conclusion. However, the first paragraph of a memo is typically used as forecasting device, and note how the opening paragraph of this memo defines the memo's function and reflects its organization. It is sensible to open memos for your classes in the same way, first directly stating the memo's purpose, then setting forth the organization and noting how the memos can be used. Organization in the body of a memo is typically characterized by the use of section headings and, of course, short paragraphs. Paragraphs should not be too bulky. 5 or 6 paragraphs per page is the usual ideal count of paragraphs. On the sentence level, you should take full advantage of the same organizational tools that you employ when you write an essay. Meaningful topic sentences, carefully selected transition words, focused section headings, indented block of cited text, and of course a bulleted series of examples, which includes powerful punctuation marks such as colon, semicolon, and dash. So next slide, please. Next slide po. Next is the selection and citation of content. A memo's content is guided, of course, by the assignment and the research required. It is important to remember as you present the content that selectivity and relevance matter greatly. Your job is to select and present the most pertinent, the most current information available to you. Do not hesitate, of course, to let your memo's content be heavily informed by your research, but also provide your own information or interpretation and organization of this research. As in any essay, you must document the sources of your information so that your reader could find the original sources of the information if they desired. So if your memo uses sources, provide the bibliographic information, the references related to your sources on a, of course, references page as an attachment, at the end of the memo. So next slide, please. A memo's tone and style. Memos for your classes require a highly informative and straightforward tone, but allow for a slightly informal style compared to essays. So the use of I and you are handy because they provide a straightforward way of communication, but you must be careful not to overuse these terms. Stylish prose is key to good memo writing, and you should not hesitate to use active or interpretative adverbs and verbs that make the sentence concrete, and also carefully choose adjectives and nouns. So a memo need not to be written in a dry, dull fashion. Rather, it should emulate the same stylistic standards that good prose has always embraced. A sentence should contain no unnecessary words, a paragraph, no unnecessary sentences, for the same reason that a drowning should have no unnecessary lines and the machine with no unnecessary parts, of course. So, as this quote suggests, good prose can achieve elegance by its clarity, efficiency, and sense of purpose. Next slide, please. So, the conclusion, of course, of a memo should not simply provide a summary of the memo's entire contents, but it should be a true conclusion. That is an articulated conviction arrived at on the basis of the evidence presented. So the closing paragraph is the place to spell out the bottom line to the reader. So here are the few tips to remember. The first one is to study and use standard memo format to present your text. Another is use internal organizational tools such as section headings, topic sentences, transition words, powerful punctuation marks to enhance the flow of ideas. And lastly, write with the same clarity, grace, and efficiency expected of you in any essay. So that would be all. Thank you.
So good day everyone. I am Ruby Marie Tamayo together with Miss Aguarino. So we were going to discuss about the endorsement. So first, what is an endorsement? Next slide please. Um, an endorsement may be a signature authorizing the legal transfer of negotiable instrument between parties, or it can be an amendment to a contract or a document. It is also a public declaration of support for a person, product, or service is called an endorsement. It is also written by a former employer or a business associate to support the fact that the person being endorsed by them is a good candidate or a trustworthy person and they are voting for it in one sense or another. Endorsement also written to endorse a person or a program. So next slide, please. So there are major kinds of endorsement. These are profession. The first one is professional endorsement. Professional professional endorsement. It includes employee endorsement, product endorsement. Second one is academic endorsement. It includes university endorsement, student endorsement, internship endorsement, and lastly, a scholarship endorsement. The third one kind of endorsement is personal. It includes endorsement for a friend or a character endorsement. Next slide, please. So, what is the importance of endorsement? An endorsement may be in favor of another individual or legal entity. An endorsement provides a transfer of the property to that other individual or legal entity. The person to whom the instrument is endorsed is called the endorsee. The person making the endorsement is the endorser. So next topic is a format of endorsement will discussed by Ms. Aguirino.
Good day, everyone. I am Crizel Aguirino to continue the discussion about the endorsement letter. So, the format of an endorsement letter. Look at this following steps to learn how to write an endorsement letter. First, Firstly, include the basic information. For example, your name, school name, address, city, state, zip code, and contact information. After this, you will write the date. And now you will include the recipient's name, address, city, state, zip code, and contact details. Next, you will put greetings after the letterhead. So just like with the given example, you say, Dear Mrs. Johnson, or to whom it may concern. Next is the first paragraph or the introduction. So in the first paragraph, it will contain the reason you are writing for. But first, you introduce yourself or your school and then state why you intend to endorse a person or a project. Next one is the main body. The main body should contain the reason behind your endorsement. You can explain the records of what the person or school or project did for you, how they benefited your school, or how it solved your problems and needs inside the campus, etc. In the closing part, you can suggest the same one more time while initiating contact. For example, in this uh, sentence, I am pleased to recommend her without reservation for any position requiring hard work, initiative, loyalty, and dedication. Please contact me if you need any further information. And then you will put your email address or your contact number. And in the end of the letter, you will put your name and your signature above it. Next is tips to remember in making an endorsement letter. First is to proofread the document for spelling or grammar errors and to make sure that all information contained in the letter is correct. Next, details related to the endorsement relationship should be mentioned and ensure that not one party will do such an act that can breach the endorsement contract. Next, the terms related to the payments must be mentioned. Details related to the mode of payment should be included as well. Next one, guidelines related to the termination should be mentioned as well. You should also add information related to the insurance policies if there, in case there are accidents or mishappenings to the subject during the term of the contract. Next one, the figures must be mentioned clearly. The letter should also be short and straightforward. The language of the letter must be professional. The letter shouldn't be handwritten and it should be typed and printed out. Lastly, a copy of this letter should be submitted to the legal department. That's all. Thank you.